It's the 1st of February. I'm Tara Mills. Welcome to the programme. It's been confirmed that the Assembly is coming back. It'll sit on Saturday for the first time in 2 years following the DUP's boycott. The last few days have seen the publication of a deal between the UK government and the DUP. And this afternoon, that legislation went through Westminster. Let's hear more from our political editor, Enda McClafferty. So, Enda, it's official.
Yes, it certainly is, Tara. All the pieces fell into place late this afternoon when Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, the DUP leader, sent a letter to the Speaker, Alex Maskey, informing him that the party was now ready to return to power sharing after that legislation passed through the House of Commons earlier today. Alex Maskey then sent a letter to the MLAs informing them that a sitting would take place on Saturday at 1 o'clock, 2 years to the day since the institutions collapsed. And then we had a statement late this afternoon from the Secretary of State, Chris Heaton-Harris, welcoming this pretty predictable development, it has to be said. Now, while that operation went smoothly, things went far from smooth for the DUP today at Westminster, where some of the internal party divisions were laid bare. And while the DUP strike is coming to an end, there were other strikes today still right across Northern Ireland, as our political correspondent Jane McCormick now reports.
Unless things are somehow derailed, devolution as we know it will be back on track within days. But striking bus and train workers aren't yet giving up their platform for fair pay.
The proverbial cart went dangled by Heaton-Harris, but the money wasn't put on the table. And until that's the political movement and the guys in Stormont, that's when the money's going to be put on the table.
As for bringing the DUP back to the executive table, the government says it's holding up its legal end of the bargain, an operation supported by Secretaries of State, present and past.
Could he outline a list or a summary of what those who are against the Right Honourable Member for Lagan-Barry's deal have actually achieved in their months of campaigning?
Yes, in round figures.
I would love to be able to outline anything. I've got a piece of paper with it. Oh, it's blank. Nothing. Absolutely zero.
The DUP leader may be glad of that support when on his own bench lie potential problems.
It's well known that I do not support this deal, this agreement. I've given reasons why not. And I think that it's important that we do have the opportunity to examine the detail of it. And I've got to say, I don't think that the way in which this has been hurried through today allows the examination.
Those of us on this bench, all of us on this bench, it is our task to ensure that the government does deliver, that we bank the gains that we have made in this process, and that we move forward on that basis.
But will moving forward prove a challenge with internal strains now on show?
The government still reserves a right to introduce laws which will interfere with trade in Northern Ireland and to put those laws in the statute book.
Well, I would urge the Honourable Member for East Antrim to read all of the proposals.
And the deal wasn't just being contradicted in the Commons.
There are still many unionists who are deeply worried and concerned that the Irish Sea border, and we must drill down into the details of this deal, that the Irish Sea border still exists.
As for the existence of other parties in this ongoing story,
it's not good practice in Northern Ireland to have a one government, one party process, and will he commit in the future to have a much more inclusive process for dealing with all of these types of issues?
To be honest with him, there was one party that was staying out of government that represents the community. And so as much, and I did try to keep him as updated as I possibly could throughout this whole process, as we have done with the other political parties.
Back on the picket line, there's no sign of the heat around public sector pay dampening down. A reality awaiting the parties. Now there's white smoke at Stormont. Jane McCormack, BBC Newsline.
And how serious do you think those divisions are within the DUP?
Well, Tara, we had the bizarre scenario today where we had two big hitters within the party attacking the same legislation at the same time, both in the Commons and the House of Lords. Legislation, of course, which the party has negotiated. So it wasn't a good look for the DUP today. But I have to say the party leader has already factored that in. He knew that these voices were going to be heard and there was nothing that he could simply do about it. For Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, it's a simple case of the sums don't add up for those people opposed to his deal. He's got the support of the majority majority of party officers. He also has the endorsement as well of the party executive, and as far as he's concerned, he's going to continue to march forward, and those voices I'm sure will continue in the background, and it's all about managing those divisions, which isn't ideal of course in an election year, but that's something I think the DUP leader will be very much up for. I think another problem for Sir Geoffrey Donaldson today though was the Northern Ireland Office Minister Steve Baker confirmed in the House of Commons that divergence may still happen in terms of Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, even though there are those safeguards in place.
And let's look ahead now to the new executive and those ministerial positions. Who do you think is going to want which department?
Well, lots of horse trading going on, Tara, over the course of the next 2 days in terms of those key departments. We even heard today, for instance, that Alliance is considering going into opposition. Now, nobody, I think, in truth, believes that. But in terms of those key posts, we know, of course, Michelle O'Neill is going to be the First Minister. We understand Emma Little-Pengelly might well be taking up the position as Deputy First Minister. There's some talk that Gordon Lyons might be the new Finance Minister. We almost know for sure that Conor Murphy is going to be the new Economy Minister. As for the Justice portfolio, we know that Naomi Long is pretty keen to retain that. The chances are she will. And then, of course, we will look to the other key positions, not least health. And Paul Given seems to be the name in the frame to take up the health department in the coming executive. So there's lots to play for in terms of those key positions. Of course, the first one to be filled will be the Speaker. And Edwin Poots is the name that's still being talked about as the man perhaps to take up that position, following in the footsteps of Alex Maskey. Now, the parties are due to meet tomorrow afternoon, Tara, and I think we'll get a clearer picture then as to who's going to be filling the top jobs.
And we'll bring that on the programme tomorrow evening. Thank you. Now we'll hear more about the executive's to-do list a little later in the programme. Now, 2 men have been given life sentences after pleading guilty to the murder of Ian Ogle. Mr Ogle was beaten and stabbed to death close to where he lived in East Belfast 5 years ago. Our reporter, Kelly Bonner, has been following the case.
Ian Ogle was killed close to his home in January 2019. 5 men were charged with his murder and were due to stand trial at Belfast Crown Court. But today, barristers for 38-year-old Jonathan Brown and 45-year-old Mark Sewell asked for their clients to be rearraigned on the single charge they faced. As the family of the 45-year-old father of 2 watched on in the public gallery, the men were asked to stand and were then charged with murdering Mr Ogle. They both replied guilty. They were handed life sentences for the attack, which a court heard was intended to cause serious harm rather than to kill. The minimum length of time they will serve in prison will be set at a later date.
Ian Ogle was murdered close to his home here in East Belfast in January 2019. His family and friends tried to save his life that night, but there was very little that they could do. He was described as a responsible man who challenged criminality. And at the time of his murder, the UVF issued a statement saying that whoever killed Ian didn't do it in the name of loyalism or the UVF.
Earlier this week, 2 men admitted lesser charges of withholding information and assisting an offender. They'll be sentenced at a later date. 3 other men now face trial on the murder charge, which begins next week. All those who pleaded guilty will be sentenced after the conclusion of the non-jury trial. Kelly Bonner, BBC Newsline in Belfast.
It's 20 to 7, still to come on the programme. We'll hear from Conor Bradley.